Hello and welcome everybody back to the Inside Our Galaxy podcast. I am your host, Eric Hernandez. As always, we got to talk about our game against Austin, where the Galaxy finally get their first win of the season. They end up winning 2-0 at home. Not in the full crowd, but you know what? A home win is a home win, and just a win in general is a win. So we'll take it finally after winless in 7. The Galaxy finally get their 3 points. So we'll talk about our thoughts about the game and everything like that, our recap. Then we'll get into some Galaxy news, talk a little bit about the MLS trade deadline, some supporter group news that came out earlier on today as we're recording. And so, yeah, we got some Galaxy news for you and our preview against Orlando City SC, which we will be traveling over there for this week's game. Should be a good conversation overall, considering we got our first win. But yeah, I mean, let's just get started with the show. But with me, as always, is my co-host, LA Galaxy Central. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing great. It feels good to finally get our first win. It took too long, but hey, we finally did it, and we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on with the Galaxy right now, on and off the field, so let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into it, man. But like, yeah, we finally got our first win. I mean, just finally. It's about time. It's about damn time. But yeah, so Galaxy get their first win, like I said, against Austin FC 2-0. Galaxy roll into this with a two striker formation. Let's see, with their most available lineup as well. So the Galaxy get, play with a lot of possession, play dominated Austin, just kind of have we always seen this season, just without minus the goals. They played with a lot of possession, they've had control for most of the game, and then we finally get our 2 goals. We get our most available lineup in this game. We were struggling a little bit in the first half, trying to find the ball in the back of the net, but luckily in the second half, Chicharito, Ricky Puig get a goal in the second half, making it 2-0, and we get our first win. I mean, like I said, winless in 7, and we finally get our first win here. I mean, took long enough, but we finally get it. So yeah, I mean, we should be happy about the performance for sure. But what are your thoughts about the game? To break it down for me, man.
I mean, it was a solid game. I think it is a game we should have won. Austin was really struggling going into this game, and they still struggle. They're struggling scoring goals right now, and they're struggling creating opportunities. And we saw that this game. And yeah, at home against a team that's not very good right now, it's a game that I think we should have won. And everyone did a solid job. It was a pretty solid game. I still think there's some things we can improve on, and it wasn't a perfect game, but getting 3 points is 3 points, and it's a win we're all going to take at the end of the day, especially considering that it's our first.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We can't be too stingy about it, right? It's who knows if we ever get a home another win in general after this, right? So we got we
Hopefully.
got to cherish it as much as we can, but hopefully that's not the case. But yeah, I mean, honestly, this was a good performance for the Galaxy, and this is really what you needed to see from the Galaxy, considering, like I said, you've had your most of your available lineup for this game. It wasn't necessarily against the best team, because Austin has not been the best team this season, but it's still, though, you still have to dominate a team that has been struggling. And if you can get that result against a struggling team like that and at home, that's a good thing, right? So I saw a lot of good things in this one. Just, you know, I mean, really, it's just, what more can you ask? We just needed the win. And honestly, another thing too is that, like, you know, the team's been saying, like, hey, if we eliminate these mistakes, we could have won a game. And this was one where there was very little mistakes. I don't want to say there was no mistakes, but there was very little mistakes. And even when they did do a mistake, they managed to, like, overturn it and stuff like that. Try to minimize that mistake. But yeah, honestly, this was a good performance by the Galaxy. You got to see a lot of good performances from this team, and your best players showed up in this game as well. So, like, I mean, it is a good win. It may have not been against the best opponent, or the most, like, I guess, a more difficult opponent, but it was still a win that you needed, and it's a win that we desperately needed, considering where we're at. But no, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed this game, and I think that there was a lot of good to take out of it.
Yeah, I think the biggest part for me this game is it was the first game where we finally had a full lineup. Like everyone was playing their natural positions. We had pretty much our full strength starting at 11, and yeah, it worked out well. We didn't have Memo Rodriguez on the wing. We didn't really have any liabilities on the field. we did have Ricky Pooch kind of playing out wide, which was kind of weird. But then later on, Costa came on. I thought he did well, and yeah, overall, it just looked a lot better on the field when he had kind of the pieces in place. And we were hoping it was going to look better eventually. And for this game, at least, it looked a little bit more promising than we saw in the past, which isn't really saying much considering we really couldn't score at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah. And let's talk about those pieces, right? Like you talked about a few players here. Of course, you got to praise the goal scorers, Chicharito, Ricky Poo showing up, scoring, doing what they need to do. Um, but those were some of the few pieces, I guess, as well. But there was a lot of good individual performances as well. I think another one I would want to highlight is Julian Aude, which is one
Definitely.
that I think a lot of people really saw and said, "Hey, like this is our guy," right? And much respect to him too, because considering I guess like after the game that the Galaxy had posted like, hey, or like a video of him talking after the game saying like, hey, this one meant more to me. Like I just lost like my grandfather and before coming to LA. And that's not easy to do considering that like, like if you ever play with that in the back of your mind, it's like it's not easy, but respect to him for that and just respect to him just how he performed. He was a guy that we said like, hey, this could be a guy and once he went on the field, once he started, there was a lot of good out of him. So that's one player I really would want to take away from this game is him because he's the new guy and he's performed well. And really, I think the defense just in general played very well. Like him, Caligari, Cáceres being the leader, and Jalen Neal doing his thing. So it's like, yeah, like you really got to see a lot of good out of it. So yeah, that's some like players that I want to highlight. Anybody else you'd want to highlight from this game?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I thought Julian Aude was outstanding. He did a lot of really good things, passing, moving. He was quick. He was physical. He wasn't afraid. So that was very good to see from him. It was a very impressive performance, and hopefully he's very happy with the way he played. And I'm very excited to see him going forward. You mentioned Caligari. I thought he was probably the one struggling player in that back line. He didn't play that bad, but I felt like he made a lot of mistakes. He turned the ball over in some areas, and he wasn't quite sure what to do. And Caligari looked a little bit lost out there, but it wasn't like an awful performance. It just wasn't great for him. But I still think Caligari can improve though. But he was probably the one guy in that back line that I don't think had a very good game.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that too. Like it wasn't, yeah, because especially in the first half, I felt like there was a few instances where I was like, man, Caligari's getting cooked out here. But like even then, it wasn't bad. Like I guess it was just more like there was a few things that he could have done better. But I think overall, like like I said, the defense was pretty good. Midfield, of course, was just the midfield, right? Like they're doing their thing. Ricky Poo's really like dominating this game and being the guy who's been carrying this team really. And he gets his goal, like I said earlier. So like he did very well. Another player I like to highlight, and I highlighted him last week, was Tyler Boyd. Again, seeing him in
Oh
person
yeah,
and
definitely.
and seeing what he did in this game as well, like I really think he's an underrated signing. And like I feel like once you get him that support, he's going to be much better. But even in this game, he was giving some good balls in there. Just we couldn't finish in the first half. But yeah, Tyler Boyd was another guy who I thought was like, yeah, like this guy's gonna get it, especially considering the fact that before we signed him, he only played like what 45 minutes in 9 months. Like, like that's not bad for a guy who's played very, very little within the past year. So like that's another guy that I want to highlight.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's a great shout, especially in the first half. Tyler Boyd really kept us kind of scoreless. His effort on the field, like winning the ball back, he did a lot of little things that don't really show up in the stat sheet. But yeah, he played really hard in that first half. He made a lot of good runs, taking on players, especially winning the ball back on the defensive end. I think that's what kind of stood out. He defended really well all around the field, which I thought was very helpful. So yeah, shout out Tyler Boyd. He's been great since he got here, and it looks like from the looks of it, he's going to have to be our star for the rest of the year unless something just happens, which it probably won't. So yeah, hopefully he continues to do well.
Right. And you know what? That's the whole point of the whole like I guess the two striker formation is that you need your like Tyler Boyd like in his position that day. Like you needed him to go defend a little bit more, and he did. Right. So like I definitely think he fits in that system. And honestly, this was the what like I think the second game we went with a two striker formation. We did with it last week, right? Or was it? I forgot if
Uh,
we did it last week or not.
Against LAFC, I don't think we did.
No, we didn't, right? Okay, never mind. I thought that we did. But at some point there I think we did go at one point like during the game, but like even then this was like two striker formation. It did work at least in this game. So that's a good thing at least. But yeah, Tyler Boyd was just one of those guys where I thought he was doing pretty good. But we talked a little bit about, some of the positives of this game. Any negatives of this game you want to take? I mean, I feel like there's still a bit of negative in it, right? Like there's always going to be some bad parts of the game. It's not always going to be perfect, but do you think there was anything that stood out to you that was kind of negative?
Well, I think, like I said before, Caligari, I just wish he was a little bit more attacking. Like, I feel like he stays back for too long. He doesn't really take enough risk going forward, or sometimes he just looks kind of scared a little bit. I feel like Caligari, he's a talented player. Like, he has talent on the ball. He has good vision, good passing. He should take more risk. He should be braver going forward. And I feel like he can do great things. But I feel like for Caligari, he's a little bit behind Aude right now in terms of like our best fullback. So hopefully we can get Caligari going a little bit because I really believe he can be an important piece to this team, what we're trying to do if we can get him going the right way. But that's still going to take a little bit of time from the looks of it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. That's gonna take some time. I mean, when we had Araujo, right? Like that was what probably like one of his best like assets was him going forward. And Caligari is like, almost the same as Julian, but it's just yeah, like I think he does need to be a little bit more on the offensive side of it because at the end of the day, this system requires to do that. That's how Vanny wants to play with their fullbacks, helping the offense. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think that Caligari needs to do that a little bit more, but that's just going to take some time. And like you said, he didn't have a bad game; it wasn't terrible. But
No, it
like
wasn't.
at the end of the day, we gotta improve on some of those little parts, right? So that's a good thing too. So, um, but yeah, I mean, honestly, there wasn't that much negative in this game either, right? I mean, I guess most of the positives just really outshined it considering we got a win too. Um, I mean, what else? What else was there in this game? I mean, Douglas Costa finally came back, and there was some interesting reactions from him. When he went inside, they booed him, so like that was pretty interesting, and he had an interesting comment to say after the game, but or social media wise, he had something interesting to say, but yeah, I mean, Douglas Costa went into this game. He didn't play too bad, to be honest. There was one part where he could have scored a goal if he like really whipped in that ball, but like no, yeah, I mean, I don't think he did bad either. So, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, really, this was just a game that we needed and a win that we needed. So, I'm happy overall.
It feels like one of those games where like no one really stood out. We can't really praise like one player too much. It's just one of those games where like everyone on the roster did their job and they did their job good enough to well. Like it was a really good team performance. They held it down. They got their 2 goals. I think the offense could have scored more than 2 goals, to be honest. I still think that's a little disappointing. We kind of did not finish some chances and we could have created more against that Austin defense. So maybe the offense could pick it up a little bit, but still, if you're going to keep a clean sheet, scoring 2 goals is fine. And the midfield obviously played very well. Even the subs I thought were really good. Like Costa was a positive off the bench. He looked pretty dangerous. And Daniel Aguirre is also a very nice player off the bench. I've been a fan of his for a while. And yeah, Aguirre looked very nice off the bench. Some great passing, some great work rate. And I like to see him come off the bench more often. I really think he can be a great player, especially in this system.
Yeah. You know what? You know what? I just remember that was a negative was that Zavaleta almost caused the penalty.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was so confused when that happened because like what happened? Like didn't Zavaleta just come in? Like what is he already doing? But no, I mean, joking aside, I mean, yeah, this was really good game all around just from everybody. Everybody did their job. So like that's what more you can ask for. Just do your job, do what you need to do, and you're gonna get your results. So I mean, yeah, it was good. It was a good showing overall. Um, but yeah, I mean, any other notes you want to take from this game? I mean,
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. I think 7 weeks without a win, that was just long enough. I still think that was too long for us. I think we had enough talent to get a win before that. Like we did envision a slow start to the season, and but 7 weeks that felt like a little bit much. But it's good we finally got this first win off our back, and hopefully we can build off it going into future games.
yeah, I mean, hopefully that is the case. I mean, we're not saying this is going to be the turning point, right? Like this
No,
is a
not
good
quite.
win, but you know, little by little, hopefully we can get our team going. And this could be the turning point. This might not be the turning point. Right now, we're praising the Galaxy for winning 2-0. They could, and then in this next game against Orlando, they could lose 3-0, right? So like that's
MLS,
easily.
bro.
I mean, I don't want to say that's going to happen, but like that can easily happen. Like that's how this Galaxy team has, kind of been, right? So, um, I mean, hopefully that's not the case, but still, gotta praise the win. Who knows if we'll get another one, but hopefully we do. And yeah, I mean, let's just keep those performances going, right? So yeah, I think that's all I have for really for this whole game. So yeah, I mean that was just our recap our of that game, and let's just shift into some Galaxy news. Of course, after the game, going into this week was the MLS transfer window deadline, and we did get some signings in before it ended. Not the signings that I think a lot of people expected, but I mean we got some signings, and Greg Vanney said he was going to bring two, and he got two. So let's talk about the first one real quick. Galaxy signed super draft pick Gino Vivi to a 1 year contract with a three option years. That was the first signing that happened before the deadline. And then the second one was we signed Mauricio Cuevas back from Club Bruges to a 3 year contract plus a two option years on this contract. So 5 years if you want to say it. So yeah, we get these two signings. We get a midfielder, we get a defender, young guys. One guy ends up being from the academy. One was a super draft pick. So again, not the signings that a lot of people expected, but we got some signings in here. So I mean, how'd you feel about these signings?
Very disappointed actually. I was really hoping to get a starting caliber winger when you saw our offense this year without Chicharito. And how old is Chicharito? Like 35, 34 years old.
34 heading into 35 around there.
Yeah, and you saw how our offense was without him. Like we basically have to rely on this guy just to be on the field, just to even score a goal. And it's like, how could that be happening and you don't sign an attacking player, an offensive type of player with that max TAM spot you have? That's just very disappointing. When we saw that international spot get brought in, we thought we were going to sign like a player. Then it just turned out to be a super draft pick, which in itself is very questionable. I don't see international spots being used on super draft picks that often, but like, hey, who knows? But still, I'm very disappointed they didn't end up getting a winger, and I think it really has to go down as a failure. No disrespect intended to these guys, but I really think we needed a starting caliber player, and we just failed to do that. And Vanny made it sound like they were in contacts with people. They were in Europe, they were in the South American market at one point, and they just didn't get any attacking player, and that's very disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, these were interesting. Um, I mean, considering that these were guys who I guess were part of the system at some point, and you get, I guess it brings in some familiarity, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, we did sort of expect those like starting caliber players. I mean, at one point we were interested in Paul Oriola, which didn't lead to anywhere, but that was also a rumor that was in the trade transfer deadline. Sorry, in the transfer deadline, and yeah, I mean, honestly, we expected that starting caliber player, and we just end up getting a super draft pick and a academy player. Like, I mean, this was something that I guess the Galaxy are shifting towards too, because we did hear from, I guess, from the supporter groups meetings a couple weeks ago or a few weeks ago now that Will Kuntz was more focused on getting these academy players and these, focus more on the youth part of it. So, I mean, in a sense, when you put that into that, you'd say like, okay, so like they are focusing more on that, but at the same time, it's like you did really expect that starting caliber player because we could use at least one more of those to really get this team going. And like you said, our offense wasn't that great before Chicharito came back. And you know what happens if he gets injured again? What happens if Douglas Costa gets suspended again? That those are still possibilities to happen within the season. And so like you kind of need that insurance. But no, I mean these are interesting picks for sure. I mean, we heard good stuff about Gino Vivi during the preseason. We heard some rumors that like, the team actually liked what he had, but other than that, it was just like, like not a lot of super draft picks pan out. And again, this is no disrespect to these guys, right? Like they get their opportunity, congratulations to them. But like at the same time, it's like some of these guys don't necessarily pan out, but I mean, I guess we're just gonna have to see what happens. And if there is some good things that was said about Gino Vivi, and then also Cuevas as well, if there was some good things that he had before he left to Europe, like and that's something that we need in this team, all right, then let's bring it in. But it's just a matter to see what will happen.
Yeah, because now it feels like you're really relying on Douglas Costa to play, and he's like the most unreliable player in the league to be on the field. He's getting suspended left and right. He gets injured left and right, like all the time. And Douglas Costa is going to miss some time, and now you really don't have a supporting player. And his absence now, you're going to have to kind of, or let's say we have a midweek game and we rotate the squad. What are we going to have? Memo Rodriguez at wing now? We know how horribly that went. Or I guess you could try Edwards at wing, but like still, like, come on, that's pretty weak if you ask me. Like we really needed a starting caliber winger, or maybe move Boyd to the bench, even though Boyd's playing really well. He'd be a great bench player, and we just failed to address that. I don't understand it. I don't really know why they didn't do anything. Maybe they have something planned for the summer, which I highly doubt. Like you and I were discussing Paul Ariola. I don't think there's any chance he's coming to the Galaxy. You're maybe a little more optimistic on that, but yeah, it just feels like an overall failure. You're just gonna have to rely on Costa to be reliable, and if we look at the history books, that's not going to happen. So I guess we'll just see. But I do think these signings are good for the depth, but it doesn't really address the main thing we needed, which was a starting caliber winger, of course.
Yeah, well, and not only just Costa, right? Because obviously Chicharito's been injured before, and even look at, for example, like Ricky Puig this weekend. He's not on the field, right? He's not going to be on this game for against Orlando, which obviously he's, more of a midfielder, but still, regardless, like, well, let's say one of your best players aren't going to play, or like your designated players don't play. Like, you need somebody who needs to step in there, and like, if we don't have that, then what are we doing? Again, I think this is good for depth, and I hope these guys really do pan out, because I'm not, I don't want them to fail. Like, I don't want to say like, oh, like, just because he's a super draft pick, I don't think he's worth anything. Like, no, like, obviously he got his opportunity, and if it's worth something, let's give it a go. But at the end of the day, I think we just really needed that starting caliber player, and maybe we do something in the summer window, right? Because like we said, Paul Arriola was part of that, you know, that trade deadline, and nothing happened to it. Maybe that's a possibility in the summer. Maybe this was just a test to get him going, and like somewhat like the deal going now. And then once summertime happens, maybe we'll push for him. But again, even then, like, what if Paul Arriola has like, competes like how he did last season, right? How he did played really well. Dallas ain't gonna give him up that easily, at least if the deal's right, maybe. But like, still, like, Dallas ain't gonna give him up that easily. But we're just gonna have to see, I guess. Like, and and maybe we do need to wait for that starting caliber player in the summer, considering how our summer signings have been in the past. Like, we got in those like good reinforcements, but even then, like, I just feel like we needed it now, not later, because who knows what happens with this team going forward. So, I mean, I guess we're just gonna have to see. But congrats to these guys. Hopefully they get their shot, and they are young, and if these guys develop to be really good players, like a couple years from now, we'll say like, hey, I'm glad we signed these guys. Like, you never know. So yeah, I mean, we'll just see how this goes.
Yeah, one more interesting thing is like I always ask myself like so the season ended last year on November 5th, I believe. And from like November 5th to like February like 27th when the season started, we made three signings, two cheap free agents in Memo Rodriguez and Chris Mavinga and Caligari. That is it. So November, December, January, February, like 3.5 months. Like, why didn't we do anything? Like, did we have any sort of plan, or did we just take a hibernation nap with the Bears or something? Like, seriously, like I feel like we should have had more of a plan. Like, we knew we were gonna lose some players. Probably Grant Steer had to leave. We knew we were gonna get rid of Cabral. We got rid of him pretty quickly. Araujo was a possibility to go out the door. So I feel like we should have had more of a plan. It's great you're trying to scramble everything at the last minute, but that's not ultimately going to work out every single time. And I feel like there just should have been more of a plan in place to have like one of these wingers brought in even a few weeks ago, so you don't cut it down to the deadline. And it looks like all of them kind of failed. Like you were trying to get wingers, not you specifically, but like the Galaxy were trying to get wingers in Europe, and that just seems very hard right now when teams are in relegation battles trying to compete for Europa League spots, Champion League spots, even some teams the league, or some teams are in different competitions like the Coppa Italia or just international tournaments like that. So it would be very hard to get players out of clubs right now in Europe. I feel like Vanny should have just stuck in that South American market when he was going after like Aude Caligari. I don't know why he didn't get a winger there, but I feel like that would have been a good market to sign one more player, and it just didn't happen. I don't know why, and neither do you really.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, these are interesting. For sure. Like, I didn't expect these guys to be our, final signings for at least this window. So like, yeah, I mean, honestly, we're just gonna have to wait and see, like, if these guys do pan out. I mean, these guys did have some positives, before we signed them. We signed them, so like, yeah, I mean, I guess we're just gonna have to see. It helps the depth a little bit, which is something that I guess we, sort of needed to fix on as well. So I mean, it's not like too bad, but like, it was just they were just unexpected. That's just how I feel. They were unexpected.
I feel like Cuevas is going to help the depth a lot actually because like I don't think Kevin Leerdam's really going to play anymore. He's just kind of a veteran there for the team. And I feel like Cuevas in like a midweek game can really bring a lot of energy to the field. So in terms of depth signings, I'm really excited for these guys. Like it's not like they're bad signings, but I just feel like I've said already, we're missing that starting caliber winger and we failed to address it, which is pretty disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, congrats to these guys. Hopefully they get their shot. Hopefully, like I said, in a couple years down the line, we're saying like, hey, I'm glad that we signed these players. So like, hopefully they get their shot, they get their opportunity, and they ball out. So yeah, I mean, we're just gonna have to see how this goes. But yeah, other news in this whole Galaxy week, I guess you can say. ACB finally announces that they will be heading back into the stands, into V Block. I guess they made a poll to vote whether they should go back or not, and yeah, I guess the turnout was that they were going to go back. So yeah, it was an interesting decision, and there has been interesting reactions, to say the least, for this whole announcement. Like I knew they were doing the whole poll thing because I got the email last week. So like it was interesting that they were considering it and now they're doing it. So yeah, I mean a lot of interesting things happen here, but how do you feel about it? ACB coming back into the stands, the first supporter group to come to say that they're going to come back.
Yeah, a lot of very happy people on Instagram and Twitter about that, as you can tell. Not really. No, everyone's pretty mad about it. I mean, it's pretty interesting. I'm not really part of ACB or part of any supporters group. I know a few people in them, but I do think it's kind of interesting that they're the first ones to come back, considering they're kind of like the head of supporters group. So it's definitely pretty interesting to say the least. I don't really know what to think about it, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, that'll be interesting to see like how many people show up, like how committed the other groups are, and like if people leave the group because of that. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. We don't know a lot right now, but I think it's one of those things you just have to visualize it out more than just read it. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But if they're going to return, hopefully they bring some people some chance. Will be nice. But yeah, I don't know really. I mean, I'm not part of the group, so maybe you know a little more than I do.
I mean, I don't know that much more other than yeah, I did get this email and I was indifferent about it when I got it. Considering that, yeah, like obviously we want to see these groups back and but there's I guess you can say there's still work to be done, but it's an interesting decision. I'm also not like a long member or anybody important in ACB because I am a member, but like even then it was just like interesting to say the least. Um, and honestly, it's just like honestly on social media, it's just a civil war. Like it ain't like
Seriously,
it's
it
really
is, man.
just us against us, and like that's the bad part about it. But hopefully everybody comes back into an understanding. And honestly, like at the end of the day, if one group decides to go back, that's I guess it's their decision as well. But of course, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I still feel a little bit indifferent about it, but it is what it is, and hopefully there is some sort of resolution for every supporter group to come back. And but yeah, I mean, at least one is coming back, so there's that, and yeah, just interesting overall to say the least.
Yeah, my kind of take on it is I feel like they should work more together. Like if one supporter group's coming back, then I think they should all come back together. It feels like the communication is not really there, which is why we're seeing a lot of toxicity on the internet today and these last couple of days. Like it just feels really toxic. It feels kind of like a disconnect. They should try to get more together, like more organized, come back together, stay out together. They should work as a team because ultimately everyone wants the same success, which is to win games and win trophies and have a good front office, which we haven't done in a while. So I do think it is kind of a questionable move to come back right now for just ACB, considering when like people even in their block aren't even coming back. But that is their own decision. And if they think that's what's best for them, then they can go on and do that. And hopefully it goes well for them. Hopefully the other groups do what they do, and we just kind of respect each other's decisions and move on with that.
Right. Keep the peace. At the end of the day, we're all Galaxy fans. If you don't go to games, or if you do go to games, that doesn't make you a better fan or anything like that. If you think you're a better fan because you make one decision, then that makes you a worse fan, in my opinion. Like, if you get what I mean. But like, um, no, I mean, yeah, honestly, it is interesting that just because honestly, I thought this was going to be like, when the poll came out, it was supposedly sent out, a poll was sent out to respectively from each group, but I guess that wasn't the choice or
Yeah,
the
I thought that
decision.
too.
So no, yeah, obviously it's interesting. For ACB, I guess welcome back. But that when they come back, that'll be May 6th against Colorado. But
The
yeah, I mean,
Cabral
of course,
Derby.
yeah, the Cabral Derby. Cabral's the reason why they came back.
They
No,
just want to see him play, bro. I
yeah, I
can't
mean,
blame
who
him.
wouldn't, right? But no, honestly, yeah, just let's not try to kill each other out there. Keep the peace, and hopefully something is resolved, and hopefully there's more info out there. Because again, context is everything. We heard it from Vanny a couple weeks ago. Context is everything. So, once we get more context, more information, and things like that, um, everything will be better. But yeah, interesting move to say the least. But that's it. Or unless you have another point.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the most toxic day in Galaxy history. I mean, like Twitter and Instagram, it's a fucking civil war right now. Like, seriously, it's
It
crazy right now.
it
Like, I'm
really
reading the
is.
comments. I'm like, damn, guys, chill out a little bit. Like,
Yeah, honestly, it is a civil war out there. So stay safe out there in the internet. But yeah,
yeah.
like I said, just you know, try to keep the peace. That we're all Galaxy fans at the end of the day. So, but yeah, I guess we can move on into our preview against Orlando City. LA Galaxy will travel to Florida as they take on Orlando City SC. Orlando are currently in ninth place in the Eastern Conference with a record of 3-2-3. and they're currently on I did put currently on a 3 game losing streak. My bad. They won the game before, so they're actually on a 1 game losing streak. But regardless, Orlando City, they won the US Open last year, so there's that to them. And right now they haven't been the best in the Eastern Conference, but we get a road trip over there, and it should be interesting to say the least. But what are your thoughts going up against Orlando this week?
Sorry, 1 second. I was just looking at their past results because I thought they were on a 3 game losing streak, but you're right. They actually did beat Minnesota. But going to Orlando, yeah, I think it's definitely a winnable game, kind of like Austin, maybe a little bit stronger. But so far this year, Orlando has been the worst home team in the league. They just lost 3-1 to DC at home. And earlier in the year, they lost 2-1 to Charlotte at home, who was also a bad team. So, and I think last year, too, Orlando was also the worst home team in the league. So I guess if you're going to go on a road trip anywhere, it should be to Orlando because they're just giving points pretty easier than they should right now to other teams in the league. So I do think it's a winnable game. It's going to be tough, especially without Ricky Puig. I think Douglas Costa is going to need to have his best game in a Galaxy uniform, really be that kind of playmaker we've all wanted him to be. And yeah, hopefully Chicharito is back on the field. We still have a natural fit on the field. I think we can go and get 3 points from this game, considering how much Orlando struggles at home. But Orlando's coach is Oscar Pereja. We do struggle against him a lot. We struggled against his Dallas teams. We also lost to Orlando last year when he was coaching that team. So it's not an easy coach for the Galaxy to beat, I guess, if you look historically. But considering how poor Orlando is at home over the last couple of years, I do think this is definitely a winnable game. And hopefully we can just build off that Austin game and manage to get 3 points from that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is like you said, this is a winnable game. Especially now that we have a win on our, you know, we just have a win now. That's a good thing, and now we feel like we can take on anybody. Hopefully, that's the
Well, I don't know
mentality.
about that. I don't know
Uh,
about that, but maybe the worst home team in the league is a doable task.
yeah, but I mean, but I'm assuming the players think like, hey, we finally got our win. We can now go compete. So, but anyways, yeah, like I mean, Orlando, you're right. They haven't been the best home team, and they also lost to well, I mean, there was 2 legs, but of course they lost to Tigres at home or tied against the Tigres at home for the CCL, which ended up eliminating them from CCL. So there's that too. So, yeah, if there's a team that we want to play against away, I guess it's this team. But yeah, it will be difficult considering that there is no Ricky Puig this weekend due to yellow card accumulation. So there is that too. And Ricky has been the backbone of this team. He has been the guy. He's him. Like, he's literally been the guy for this team, keeping this team afloat in a sense. But yeah, without having him on the field, it's going to be interesting who they put in and what formation they go in. And
Well,
honestly, it'll just be it'll be interesting to see what we do without him. But I am confident this team could compete and this team could try to get some sort of result. But no, yeah, I mean, I guess we just got to hope for the best for this one.
I do think the formation going into this game is pretty easy. I think they're going to go on a 2-4-4-2 again with 2 strikers up top, Douglas Costa and Tyler Boyd playing on the wings. That's really the only option you can go. I mean, unless you want to go 4-3-3 with Memo again, which no, but I think that's really the only option. I think it could work possibly. It kind of worked last week a bit. Obviously, it was a little different because we had Pooch like kind of playing out wide a little bit, but I think that's the formation you have to go. And Douglas Costa really has to be that playmaker for this team. And we need our midfield to have another outstanding game like they usually do.
Right. I mean, if we do go in like a 4-3-3, I wouldn't mind Memo being in that spot because we have only seen him in.
No.
I mean, I mean, to be fair, we've only seen him in the winger spot, so it's like I haven't seen Memo in his actual position yet, or at least in the midfield. So
Fair enough, I guess, but I
you
don't know. I
know,
don't think
like
he's that good.
I mean, obviously he's not Ricky Pooch. I mean, I think anybody can
No.
understand that he's not Ricky Pooch, but if he can at least fill in for 1 game in that position, I wouldn't mind. Um, but I mean, still though, it will be interesting to see how they line up, and because I don't know if you can start Costa in this game considering he hasn't been match fit. So
Well, whole week of training, I feel like is enough. After like training the week before, I feel like it could be enough, in my opinion. But
I guess so. But yeah, I mean, we're just going to see. I think this is a doable game. Again, away games aren't easy, but if there's one, it's this one, and it's still not easy. But I'm not trying to say that. But like, still though, like away games, they're just not easy, and I don't know. I don't know what I was trying to say there, but anyways, um, hopefully we can get some sort of result in this one. Because we do still need to get back on track. If we could get another win away, that's great. But you know, hopefully we keep the momentum coming from our last game. So that's all I have to
definitely.
say. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean that's really much it. I don't know if you have any other points for Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando's really struggled at home over the last year, 2022. I think I mentioned they were like the worst home team in the league. This year, they're really struggling at home. So I think they're going to have a point to prove this game that they don't want to keep struggling at home. Obviously, it's their second home game in a row. They're going to come out motivated and mad from last week after losing to DC. So we've got to be ready to match their energy. We've got to be ready to compete for 90 minutes. And if we do that, there's a good chance we could come out with a result from that game. So hopefully that happens. And yeah, I'm just hoping for the best, just like you are.
Yeah, hopefully. And also, Orlando does have a good atmosphere too and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily an easy place to go play in either. So yeah, I mean, we just hope for the best. Hopefully they build the momentum from last game. And yeah, I mean, that's all we can really do. Hope for the best. But anyways, I think that's going to be it for the show for today. Can't thank you all enough for watching and listening. If you want to follow us on social media, go follow me at Insider Galaxy on Instagram, on Twitter. Go follow LA Galaxy Central on Instagram. And anything you want to say to the listeners before we go?
No, that's it. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, always. But yeah, like I said, thank you guys for listening and watching. Be a friend, tell a friend about the podcast wherever, whenever you're listening to this podcast and watching this podcast now. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and hopefully we get to 3 points. So thank you all, and G's up.
7 words.